Do, baby? Yeah. What's up? This is something new, even though the faces are the same. Welcome to Wake and Rake with Heis Fensty, everybody. This is an idea that had been percolating for a little bit, but now that I'm a free agent, it seemed like this would be an ideal time to start it. You know, Fensty, before I introduce you, the great Justin Fensterman from SiriusXM and Fantasy Alarm. You know, Friday, and by the way, for all of you guys that had reached out, it means the world. And, you know, once more and more people start watching, I will thank you guys again. But, you know, I talked to you on Friday. I was trying to say to myself, like, man, do I kind of want to do the show today? Do I kind of want to go ahead and, you know, deal with this? Maybe just sort of take the weekend off? And you're like, no, buddy. No, this is what we do. This is what we've been doing the last several years. We've been working Sundays together for 5 years, 6 years now, man.
We have, man. And you know what? I'll say this. Ducks fly together, Ben Heisler. That's what it's all about.
And I'm gonna move your tag so people can see the jersey. The full on Ducks.
That's right.
Ducks, you got your Ducks together in a row today, man. You do. Well, listen, you're one of my closest friends in this industry, and the fact that I get to go and do a show with you over the last several years together, I couldn't pass that up. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for watching, and for all the support. Seriously, like, it's meant the absolute world. So we're here for you. This is what we do for the next hour or so. We are going to take all of your lineup questions for whatever daily fantasy site you want. You got a DraftKings question? Fine, lay it on us. FanDuel, fantasy draft, monkey knife fight, whatever. Season longs as well. Fensty and I are prepared for you guys, so please come on out and go ahead and send in your questions. We are here to answer all of them over on this Sunday morning. So, Fensty, let's start some of the news of the day. We have now learned officially, and by the way, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to get up other than the fact that the Ducks fly together and you're wearing your number 99 Adam Banks Cake Eater jersey.
That's right. And speaking of leaders, just like Adam Banks was in the Ducks, yes, more of a leader than Charlie Conway. For those that know the movie series very well, he is the real Minnesota Miracle Man, because without Banks, the Ducks don't win that title. But I'll say this, Ben Heisler,
right.
Drew Brees coming back.
Yes.
That is mind-blowing to me. I mean, at this point, Teddy Bridgewater was doing so well. Why not let Drew Brees have another week off just so to make sure he's 100%. This totally seems like a rush job. I'm a little shocked that it's looking like he's playing today.
Here's the only reason that I can fathom here, because it's not as if Teddy Bridgewater wasn't living up to what he was supposed to do. He had been excellent. I think we can all, you know, fully agree on that. But I think when it comes to, and by the way, did I just I'm already shaky, man. I already went ahead and accidentally did a screenshot, and you know, we're moving a little bit slowly today, but we are here. So, Drew Brees, I think what this is this is a guy that's close to the age of 40, if not 40 already. Let's get him back in. We are going to need him down the stretch if you're New Orleans. Let's get him in a cupcake matchup against Arizona. Let him start feeling comfortable. You know, it's still going to be a Latavius Murray game. You know, it would surprise me if Murray doesn't touch the rock at least 20 times today. But maybe they just say, okay, we don't want Drew Brees coming back after a bye, you know, just completely cold. Let's get him into a game rhythm. Let's get him feeling good and move on from there. But Teddy Bridgewater went undefeated. Him and Kyle Allen both took over their teams and both have continued to win. And Bridgewater the last couple of weeks too, Fensty's put up very ideal fantasy numbers.
And again, this is why I was just wondering. I get what you're saying, Ben, but it shocks me. But anyway, this is what we do. We roll with the punches. This Cardinals-Saints game that we definitely want some exposure to, 48.5 right now in Vegas. I mean, no Kamara, according to Schefter. You've got David Johnson, who's also not going to play, according to Schefter as well.
Yes.
So all those with Chase Edmonds shares, there you go right there. Jared Cook, also, we've been attacking Arizona all season long when it comes to the tight ends. No Jared Cook as well. So Josh Hill at this point could be in play too for you. Christian Kirk, also a game-time decision. So a lot in the air in this Cardinals-Saints game, Ben.
Yeah, there's a lot to digest, and we'll break it through over the course of the next 55 minutes or so. We're already getting questions coming in, so thank you guys for sticking with us. Mortar wants a shout-out. There you go, Mortar. Mourtar. There's your shout-out right here, the first shout-out on Wake and Rake. And let's go back to Periscope with Shake and Blake to best tournament tight end picks on FanDuel today. Well, I think if you're looking purely based on price range, and if I'm starting to get some of my FanDuel picks out, Fensty, you talked about Josh Hill. Again, you want to target Arizona against the tight end spot. Hill caught a touchdown last week from Teddy Bridgewater. And especially with no Jared Cook, I'm pretty sure that Drew Brees is going to go back to the tight end spot. He's going to find the ideal mismatch, and especially like in a goal line situation, we know Thomas is going to get volume, and we know that the tight end for New Orleans is going to get volume. But if Josh Hill's 5,000 on FanDuel versus say somebody like Greg Olsen at 5,500, or maybe 1,000 more you can get to Gerald Everett, do you feel like Josh Hill at 5K is decent enough savings?
I do actually, and that's, again, the matchup is ideal. And you mentioned Gerald Everett, who was also in a good spot. Our guy at FantasyAlarm.com, Howard Bender, very much into Gerald Everett as well. So that's been on my mind the last few days. The thing is with these top tight ends here, like Zach Ertz has a very tough matchup here against Buffalo. So this is a situation where you're going to want to pivot, maybe save a little money. I do like the Darren Waller matchup too against Houston, because as we've been saying, Ben, you want to attack Atlanta, you want to attack Houston. However, I'll say this, in an injury that is actually, I thought he was going to be out, Tyrell Williams looks like he's suiting up, so that's a little bit of a target share right there when it comes to Waller. Waller will still get fed. But going back to what you're asking, I think that price point for Hill is very fair at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, like the disparity for pricing on FanDuel is really not all that much when it comes to tight ends. I mean, George Kittle, the most expensive tight end on the slate, it's $6,900. We're talking about Josh Hill, only a difference of $1,900. So I think if you can spend up at tight end, there's certainly plenty of solid options. But I mean, you're talking about Hunter Henry being in play against the Bears today.
Yes.
I don't necessarily trust Austin Hooper, who's been the number one tight end because of Matt Schaub this week. And he's priced up as if Matt Ryan were playing. You talked about Gerald Everett already. What about somebody like Jonnu Smith, who's filling in for Delaney Walker in a sneaky game, Fensty, between Tampa Bay and Tennessee, where both these teams are going to be throwing constantly. Neither of these two teams can stop the run. Both of them are exploitable against the pass. Ryan Tannehill in play, possibly as even a cash game option. Jameis Winston is one of my favorite tournament plays of the week. So maybe you go ahead and find an opportunity. If you're running it back, maybe Jonnu Smith is that low-owned guy, and you can really start to spend elsewhere.
I mean, the Bucs are letting up at this point almost 31 points per game, Ben. So you can absolutely get that production there. But here's my question to you, because I've been looking up stats, and one of the first things I do, and Ben, and this is something that we should be talking more about, is what goes into our research. Because yes, we want to give you picks, but we want to teach you how to play the game as well. We want you to learn how to look at the trends, what to look for.
Yeah.
And the first thing I see this morning, Ben, is I always check which teams are the worst against the rush. Which teams are letting up the most points? And I write a little review sheet for myself like it was in biology class back in high school. So seeing the Bucs right there, 68 rushing yards per game. That's the number one right there. So with looking at that with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that makes me wonder if Henry is still very much in play. I'm going to still say yes in this matchup.
I just can't see it. I feel like it's going to be very pass heavy all throughout the course of the game. But here's the thing. Even with Henry this week, it's going to be low ownership, and I think that's a nice contrarian play for you. Certainly, if you're going to try and get a little bit of leverage on the field, I think that's a really interesting play. Seth, you are still doing the show. Best news of the day. Seth, you've been with us the whole time, brother. We appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are here today as well. Speaking of Tennessee, Fensty, we got a question from our buddy Corey out in Winnipeg. He wants to know whether or not you go with Corey Davis, who found a bit of a reemergence last week, with Ryan Tannehill, or Brandon Cooks with the LA Rams. The Rams, of course, are playing in London today against the hopeless Cincinnati Bengals. To me, I think if you're looking for a bit of a safer play, it's crazy to think that Corey Davis is now considered a safe play, Fensty.
Right.
But I really believe that, especially with the newfound target volume, he's probably the safer play compared to Brandon Cooks. Cooks, he's not at home. It's technically a home game, but I just don't. I think the ceiling is certainly there against Cincinnati, but I think Goff, the way that he's been spreading it around, especially incorporating more Gerald Everett, I think more volume is going towards Corey Davis. So I'd go Corey Davis in cash as the safer play, Brandon Cooks in tournaments today.
Well, let me ask you this, Ben. Do you expect the Rams to be focusing more on the run? I know health has been a factor here. So when it comes to the Rams, do you think because the Bengals are just so poor against the run that they'll try to utilize their ground game a little bit more? Because I'm with you with Davis right here, especially with Tannehill at the helm. But with the Bengals here, I'm starting to wonder if the Rams' run game is actually in play, as scary as it is, and that makes me wonder if there's going to be less pressure on that passing game and more on that groundwork.
So it's all dependent on whether or not you think Todd Gurley is going to get volume or whether it's going to be between him and Darrell Henderson. And we'll see if they incorporate a third running back into the mix. Last week, Todd Gurley played 46 out of the 76 snaps against Atlanta. He ran 18 times for 41 yards, averaged 2.3 yards per attempt, and was only targeted once in the passing game, but he did catch a touchdown. So he was able to save face today. You're right. Cincinnati is atrocious against the run. Like, to me, like, if we're talking about a season-long perspective, like, if you have Todd Gurley on your season-long team, you absolutely fire him up today. If you're playing daily, I suppose you can have a lineup with Todd Gurley in it, but maybe that more intriguing dart throw is if the Rams get up big, maybe they let Darrell Henderson just go nuts. And maybe this is an opportunity to get his confidence up a little bit and really let him run wild. I'm trying to get pricing on Darrell Henderson. He's 5,600 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he is 4K. So he's in play today. But again, I think there's just better value running backs, especially in cash. Henderson is purely a tournament play.
It's become so hard to figure out the Rams' direction with who's getting the prioritized targets because, like you said, Ben, when you have a lot of options right there, there's only so much of that pizza pie that could go around. So
I'm with you.
What you're saying, as nauseous as it is saying Corey Davis over Brandon Cooks here again, this isn't Marcus Mariota. This is Ryan Tannehill. Came through last week, and now once again, he doesn't have that many targets, especially with Delaney Walker out. So you mentioned Jonnu Smith already and Corey Davis, but outside of that, I mean, you've got Humphreys in a revenge game narrative then.
That's true. I forgot about. I feel like Adam Humphries is one of those guys where he's like too nice for a revenge game. He's like, no, listen, I really appreciate everything they did for me. They gave me an opportunity to be a slow slot guy in the middle of the field and run really nice routes. And here I am able to make more money with Tennessee. I don't necessarily think he sees it as a revenge game, but maybe that's just me.
Right. Again, I wish he would get a few more targets there. Got 4 last week and 6 the week before as well. But still, just, again, 3,900. We're talking about someone that if you go really chalk on these salaried sites, then yes, then maybe Humphreys is a good play to balance it out a little bit.
From Jack Seth actually does have a question. We talked about Brandon Cooks. He wants to know whether or not you go with Brandon Cooks today or Odell Beckham Jr., Cleveland going on the road as 11-point dogs against the Patriots in what is looking like a pretty bad weather game today, Fensty, which, go ahead and give your perspective on this. But there's something very intriguing about this game for me that I'll tell you about in just a second.
Yeah. Can I bury the lead or spoil lead? Is it the whole Bill Belichick factor?
No, it is not. But go ahead. But I didn't think about it from that perspective.
I got you, Petty Heis. I got you.
That's good. That's a good play. No, it is not the Bill Belichick factor, but go ahead and I'll tell you where I'm thinking about this.
I mean, look, the targets are definitely there with Odell Beckham Jr. As frustrating as it has been overall, we wanted to get in the end zone at the same time with the bad weather. I mean, man, how stingy has New England been? I still see him getting that target share, though. So if there's anyone that I'm looking at, I would obviously be Odell Beckham Jr. But again, need him to get in that end zone.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. Here's the thing. According to Kevin Roth over at rotogrinders.com, there is going to be rain throughout the whole game. There's going to be some issues. It's kind of not as bad as what we saw last week when you gave us the Justin Fensterman weather report that will forever remain in fantasy sports infamy. But, I mean, there's not going to be deep shots down the field. Like, if you thought that Philip Dorsett was a good play today, he's probably done. Mohamed Sanu, certainly I didn't love the move for him anyway if you had him in season long, but this is going to be a run-heavy game. We've already seen the total in this game, Fensty, go from 46 down to 43.5. And if we're talking about running games between Cleveland and New England, if you're giving me a distinct advantage, that goes to Cleveland with how good Nick Chubb has been. And I'm perfectly understanding of how Bill Belichick looks to shut down their best player. But right. I think Cleveland is going to commit to the run, and there's only so much you can do to really neutralize it unless you put 8-9 guys in the box. And then if that's the case, then Baker can line up under shotgun, find Odell on a slant, especially if they know that everyone's coming to try and stop the run. I don't think Cleveland's going to win, but I think they make this game a lot closer than a lot of people anticipate. And with nobody wanting to play anybody against Cleveland's defense, I love Nick Chubb as a tournament play today.
Right. And, it goes back to when I think of other defenses, stingy defenses that Cleveland has faced. You go back to the 49ers, Nick Chubb was still able to rush for 87 yards on them, even though they had nothing really working out in the passing game in that matchup because of how good the 49ers have been, how sound they are defensively. Nick Chubb is still able to get his, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think he's in play. He's definitely a top 5 running back for me on the slate today, and I'm really excited to play him in a couple GPP lineups today. From Jack over on YouTube Live. Jack is, of course, a friend of the show. He says, "Good morning, guys. Lineup is thin this week, so I don't have too many options." And by the way, we have questions from Petey. We have questions from Seth, from Zach, Sizzle, Shake and Blake, and a few more coming up. So if you have sent us a question, we will get to all of them here on the first installment of Wake and Rake with Heis Fensty. So Jax asks, I don't have too many options. I picked up Kenny Stills. Do I start him over Brandon Cooks? Man, a lot of Brandon Cooks questions today, Fensty.
Yeah, it's very confusing at this point with what we're going to do. I mean, you even talk about our Fantasy Alarm FF Pie bet that we're doing for charity.
Oh, I got to pick somebody today. That's right.
Yes, I was going to remind you about that, but Cooper Kupp has tossed the pie in the face now the last 2 weeks, Benny Heis. So with that, again, the target share, it's making all of us fantasy owners confused.
I'm not too concerned about it today, though. Just because, again, you can run. You can do whatever you want on Cincinnati.
Right.
Here's the thing about Kenny Stills, though. There's going to be plenty of air yards. There's going to be a bunch of volume. Do you think it's reasonable to anticipate that Kenny Stills in the Will Fuller role gets more targets than Brandon Cooks today?
I think that it is a little bit reasonable, but again, it's going to be very close. It's going to be deep shots. That's what it comes down to.
So, I don't think either of them are safe. That's the only problem.
No.
You can't say one of them is a tournament play or one of them is a dart throw in your season long league. It's kind of saying which matchup do you like more, and they both have amazing matchups today. I think I'm more likely to start Stills.
Okay.
At least this week on at home against Oakland. I feel like I really like the matchup. And you're right. I think the Rams, there's just too many mouths to feed, and it could become a Todd Gurley game. I think I would rather go with Kenny Stills, Jack, than Brandon Cooks.
The higher ceiling guy, Ben, I totally understand it and get there. And again, we've seen Deshaun Watson continue to feed Will Fuller while he was in, even when Fuller was dropping passes as well.
Yeah.
So let's say Kenny Stills drops a big pass early. Don't freak out, because all of a sudden he drops a big touchdown, what pass that could have been a touchdown or a long play. He'll go right back to him. DeAndre Hopkins can only do so much. I've watched a lot of Houston this year because I have a ton of exposure to them frequently and daily, as I say every week.
Right.
Attack. So I'm always looking to do game mini stacks when Houston's involved. So when it comes to separation, Kiki Cutie has a very tough time getting that separation from the defenders. So with that, I'm still thinking Kenny Stills is in play. So I don't mind that, Ben.
Okay, very good. So it's because we're somewhat on the same page here from that perspective. So good question, Jack. Wishing you all the best today. Good luck in that matchup. From Seth, our buddy Seth, he says, how much confidence do you have in Matt Nagy and David Montgomery today? He has promised he's going to run more. So let me address this as the Chicago Bears fan in the room, and then I'll get your perspective on this. Bears were, I suppose you could have believed that coming off after the bye with their defense that they could have and should have beaten New Orleans with backup quarterback, backup running back, backup tight end. Bears also don't have Akeem Hicks, so they couldn't stop the run. Latavius Murray ran all over them in the second half, partially because the defense had been on the field for so long. And frankly, Fensty, they gave up. They said, Mitch isn't getting us anywhere. Why continue to ball out when there's nothing that's going to happen on the other side? I think what you're going to see from the Bears, at least the next few weeks, is very similar to what you saw from them in Week 2 against Denver, which is not a particularly fun brand of offense to watch, but they ran the ball, they controlled time of possession, they gave their defense a breather and let them go to work, and they were able to escape Denver with a win. I feel like that's what we're going to have to see now, because the type of expectations that we had for Mitch Trubisky to take a step in the right direction in this offense, Fence, just hasn't been there. And he's looked awful and confused, and yet Nagy's been having him throw 50 times a game in those 2 terrible games. It doesn't make sense. They're going to have to at least commit to the run, and I do think David Montgomery is a sleeper that I do like this week.
Especially, looking at that DK price point at $4,400, why not at this point?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like other guys that are sort of in a similar realm. Like, what is Chase Edmonds today? Because he's getting the start, but it's also in a very difficult matchup. But so David Montgomery, you said is 4,400.
Yes.
Okay. In that same range, Sony Michel is 5,200. If you believe New England's going to pound it on the ground. Ty Johnson in a great matchup is 4,900. James White is 51. But then after that, there's nobody this week that's really in that category for Montgomery that's fairly comparable. So I think maybe Miles Sanders at 4,200 getting involved. You can run on Buffalo. And Jordan Howard is 4,600. So I think based on Montgomery at that price point, I don't mind it one bit.
Yeah, and when it comes to Edmonds, I mean, who do I think could get more carries naturally with David Johnson out? I mean, I think Edmonds has the edge, at least for now with Montgomery. But again, price point is king here. Matchup not ideal for Edmonds, as you just mentioned, against New Orleans. So again, let's take advantage now. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to grab yourself a really chalk running back, and then you go down to Montgomery. That's how you do it. That is how you protect yourself a little bit. Maybe what you could even do, because Montgomery's so cheap here, you get two strong running backs and then have them in as your flex.
Yeah, that's absolutely in play. Absolutely. You could go, like, Barkley's a fantastic option today. Same with Fournette. Latavius Murray we agree was going to be the chalk running back, the cash game running back everywhere, right? He's 5,800 on DraftKings. I'll have to check and see what his price point is over on FanDuel. But at home as big favorites against Arizona makes all the sense in the world for Latavius Murray to get upwards of 20 to 25 touches and then multiple goal line looks, right?
Right. And also other guys that you can look at, and again, you're going to have to wait for the Monday night game for this, but James Conner as well. Let's not forget about that Monday night game.
No.
And take advantage of those Dolphins. And if there's anybody on this Steelers team at this point, we'll see what happens with Samuels. He's questionable at this point. James Conner is in a smash spot here.
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer your question, Seth, Matt Nagy, I don't think wants to try and answer the questions again about we know we need to run the ball more. He doesn't want to have to admit to the media, I'm not an idiot. I think they are going to make a much more concerted effort because I think they have hit rock bottom with Mitch, and I think they need to do whatever they can to keep their defense happy from not quitting, because then that defense quits, Fensty, the season's over, because you're not going to overcome it on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, why draft this guy if you're the Bears? Why draft this guy if you're not going to utilize him fully? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and the other problem, too, is that the offensive line has taken a major step in the wrong direction. They brought back every starter last year, and I know that Kyle Long just went on injured reserve, but they're not getting any sort of push. So even when Montgomery gets opportunities, he's being met in the backfield. And, there's only so much you can do at that point.
Let me ask this, Ben. Let me ask this in that same matchup here. Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon. How are we to handle this at this point? I mean, Keenan Allen is a big questionable coming into this game, and it's really trending to be that he's not going to be suiting up for it. So with that, Austin Eckler, just as a receiver alone, that's someone that you can't forget about. 5,900 on DK, like that price point as well.
Yeah, and the Bears the last few weeks have struggled against pass-catching running backs, so I think Austin Eckler, especially with no Keenan Allen in this game, and the Chargers being underdogs, is a fantastic play. I just made a trade for Austin Eckler in another league, and people continue to just feel like he's done. I traded, I had great wide receivers in this league. I have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Amari Cooper, so I traded Calvin Ridley to get to go ahead and get Austin Eckler. I still feel like his role in this offense won't go away. There's too much trust now with Phillip Rivers and Austin Eckler in the passing game. And yes, even if Melvin Gordon is taking away more opportunities and more volume in the running game, as somebody playing in PPR, Fensty, I'd rather see Austin Eckler run more routes and catch more passes. I don't think his role is dead on this team. In fact, I think there's an opportunity that it could grow back to a closer point where it was at the beginning of the season versus when Melvin Gordon came back.
Right, and I'll say this again, and I said it before when talking with you on this show, Ben, is that with Austin Eckler last year, even with Melvin Gordon in, he missed a couple games, but even with Melvin Gordon not holding out last year, Austin Eckler was still flirting with that top 25 value as a running back last year. So especially, again, with Keenan Allen, teams have figured it out, and more teams, when they don't have as skilled receivers, should put that focus on that primary receiver. Teams have been able to take Allen out a little bit when he's been healthy, and that's where short passing to Austin Eckler and how strong he is and hard to take down, again, I view him when in DFS as a receiver, even though he's listed running back. I think of him more in that receiving role and passing game, and that's where you're going to continue, especially in PPR, to take advantage.
Do you expect the Bears defense, though, to bounce back this week?
No, I don't. And that's why I'm going to be hopefully looking to mini stack this game. Right now, I'm looking at both running backs here, and again, it allows me to spend up at other spots that are a little bit more uncertain when you've got guys like Montgomery and Eckler so cheap.
No doubt about it. Let's keep going. Another one coming in on YouTube Live. Do you go with Gerald Everett or Dallas Goedert at the tight end spot this week? Also, Kenny Stills and Brandon Cooks. I think we addressed the Kenny Stills, Brandon Cooks already. So, yes, we are going with Stills. Gerald Everett or Dallas Goedert this week. Goedert is going to Buffalo, a backup running back there, but he's had some big plays the last couple of weeks versus Gerald Everett at home. Not technically at home, but in a home game in London. Give me Gerald Everett.
Yes.
Especially in looking at the weather in Buffalo today, it's going to be very heavy run-oriented. And again, listen, if you needed another reason to buy in on Philadelphia this week, it's because their front seven, their offensive line is going to dominate on Buffalo. They can't. The winds are going to be anywhere from 20 to 40 miles per hour in Buffalo today. So passing game, kicking game is all going to be issues. There's a possible chance of rain.
And that makes me so mad, Ben, because I really wanted to attack the Eagles secondary. I've been so successful doing that. And
John Brown would have been a great play today.
Yeah, Josh Allen all week long has been my quarterback that I've been going with in DFS. I'm not going to hide anything. I mean, you can crush, even you can throw on the Eagles secondary, Ben.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But again, this is where weather impact. Now, I don't think. Okay, you better warm up, Ben. You better loosen up here. You're going to
listen, man. When you get to be our age, you can't just go out and toss it around anymore. You got to actually stretch.
That's why I can't play pickup basketball anymore. I'm afraid of injuring myself. Old man problems, right there.
Yeah.
But going back to that secondary, I don't want to say I'm fully off of the Bills, but now it gives me more confidence that maybe Josh Allen can run one or two, and I think he's going to run one in. Maybe he runs two in now, Ben, and he's still in play.
Yes, but he's going to be running all over the field. So maybe even from a floor perspective, Josh Allen could still be in the game, and they just let him run all over the place on Philadelphia. The problem is that Philadelphia's been very good against the run this year. Where you beat them is through your secondary, and at this point forward, there has been anybody that's been able to, not struggle against them. Like, it's from a run game perspective against Philadelphia, it's just not a matchup I like, and I'm probably gonna at some point run over and bet the Eagles not just to cover but to win outright today. So yes, we're going Gerald Everett over Dallas Goedert.
Are you out on John Brown today? That means
yes.
Okay.
Yes. I just, if the winds are 20, we always talk about how rain doesn't matter, but wind does. Like, if Josh Allen, who's already not particularly accurate, is already dealing with bad swirling winds in Buffalo, like, John Brown is that deep option. Like, he's not going to be doing dump-off passes to him. So, like, maybe it's an opportunity for, like, Devin Singletary to have a decent game in the passing game. Like, maybe he finally gets going again. But I don't like it.
I watched him, Ben. I'm a spectator with Devin Singletary. I feel like that's getting too cute right now.
Fair enough. I'm just talking, like, if I'm looking for Buffalo plays today.
Right.
Maybe he starts to get fed a little bit more just because the wind is going to be an issue. I know Josh Allen's got as strong of an arm as anybody, man, but that's tough. And so I expect him to struggle a lot today. Yep. From Sizzle over on Periscope, he says, Cortland Sutton, James White, or Ty Johnson in a half-point PPR. So James White, we were talking about intriguing matchups and bad weather in New England today, Fensty. I love James White today. I think he's absolutely in play. I think he's always undervalued because the touchdowns haven't gone to him, although I think he had 2 touchdowns called back last week, and Sony Michel ended up vulturing a couple of them in his place. So I think James White is absolutely in play against Cleveland today. Cortland Sutton, though, I think if you're talking about upside, is the guy that I like. And Ty Johnson, I think he's kind of just a guy. He wasn't somebody that I was prepared to spend all of my free agent blind bidding on. I just kind of thought it would be.
I did.
Well, did you need the running back help desperately, or are you buying into him? That's a big distinction here.
It's a league that we're in, the straight cash money fantasy football, which is very deep, a 14-team league with like
8 bench spots. That's
the thing. There are hardly any bench spots, but there are a lot of starting spots, and there is.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
There is nothing on that wire, Ben. So, yes, I lost Kerryon Johnson. So I had a decision to make. It's either roll with Miles Sanders and Devonta Freeman for the rest of the season, and because I hadn't spent any fab money in this league for a situation like this, or do what I did and spend and maybe overspend a tad, and by a tad I mean overspent a decent amount, and spend 78 of my 100 on Ty Johnson.
What do you think he would have gone for if he was the starting running back to start the season in an auction draft?
I could only imagine here, but without Kerryon Johnson at all?
Yeah.
I think you would have been spending at least in the 20s on him.
Probably.
Right.
Just crazy. Did we spend
to the run more than they had, and now
that is true. Yeah, Stafford's been top 5 this year in deep ball completions.
Right. And so when it comes to this situation, J.D. McKissic is also there. But here's the deal, Ben. This is the motivation game that Ty Johnson needs, because rumors are circulating with the trade deadline coming up that they might acquire someone like a Kenyon Drake right there. And that does not bode well for McKissic or Ty Johnson at this point. So for Ty Johnson himself, who I think has the edge over McKissic, this is the audition for him.
So you look at it as this is an opportunity for him to really get that role locked in. You're not worried about the 60-40 or 65-35 split with McKissic?
Oh, of course I'm worried about that. I'm just trying to justify it to myself, thinking that, these guys are all seeing what's going on in the news wire. They know the trade deadline's coming up. Kenyon Drake has been in trade rumors for weeks now.
Right.
He's definitely out of Miami somehow, some way. They're going to commit to Walton Moore. So with that, you have to think from Ty Johnson's perspective, if I don't produce, they're going to trade for this other guy that's going to eat into my carry. So this is it. And as someone who spent so much on Ty Johnson, and I'm sure others out there feel this way, I'm very nervous. I'm sweating.
Okay. You might be schwitzing a little bit, but are you playing him over James White or Cortland Sutton?
No, I am not. I think with what you said, James White, again, those targets alone, I'm very trustworthy in that. Makes it a safe floor. I don't view James White just like with other running backs. I mentioned this with Eckler. James White essentially makes his points from the receptions and the targets. And when I'm seeing consistent 8, 9, 10 targeted games, Josh Gordon, the injured Patriots receiving core, now bringing in Mohamed Sanu, so there's going to be a little bit of a transition. Of course they're going to rely more on White in the passing game.
Yeah, White's still the safer option. Sutton has already gotten a lot more targets, Fensty, than maybe I even had anticipated him this year. But especially with no Emmanuel Sanders, I worry about them just trying to double cover him. And maybe it's a Deshaun Hamilton game. Maybe it's a Noah Fant game on the road against Indianapolis. I just have no faith in that passing offense with Joe Flacco. So, but he also is the higher ceiling player of all three guys. So James White, Sizzle, I would say we both agree that that's your cash game play. That's your lock, the safer play. Cortland Sutton, though, especially now with no Sanders, could get upwards of 10 to 14 targets. So, we'll go White to be the safe play, Sutton for the upside play. From Varun on YouTube Live says, pick 2 for PPR, Odell Beckham, Joe Mixon, Ty Johnson, Golden Tate. Could also be Auden Tate. I don't know. He just says Tate.
Oh, that makes a big difference right there.
Let's go for perspective. Let's just go with Golden Tate, because I probably wouldn't be playing Auden Tate getting shadowed by Jalen Ramsey today. Right. So if it's 2 for PPR, Joe Mixon at this point, he's almost droppable. You can't drop him because some people took him in the first round, but I'm not touching him, especially in a game against the Rams. He had an ideal matchup last week at home against Jacksonville, who had been struggling against the run, especially with no Jalen Ramsey on the field. With too much basketball. We got basketball, we got football going on. Yeah, too bad he's not on the floor. And he had 8 carries for 2 yards. The only reason that Joe Mixon didn't completely destroy your fantasy team is because he ended up catching a 1-yard touchdown pass. So He saved the day with 6 points on the ground from that perspective, but that was it. I want nothing to do with Joe Mixon, especially not against the Rams front 7. No, he's out of here.
And these sites are going to want you to have everything to do with him. They're being like, look, he's so cheap. Look at that value right there.
Yeah.
How do you trust this guy? I feel like I've not had him in a single DFS lineup all season long.
I had it until last week. Last week I bit the bullet on Joe Mixon.
Right. I mean, the only player I've actually trusted a bit was I had one share of Tyler Boyd in Guillotine. He came through some weeks, didn't others. But then Auden Tate, I had him in 1 week. But that's been it. It's been very hard to trust this team, Ben.
Joe Mixon is 4,600 on DraftKings this week.
Right. They
Like,
want to take the value, take the stake.
Right. Yeah. No, the carrot's just right in front of me. It's dangling. I'm like, no, man, I want cake instead. Let me eat cake.
Going back to this question though, Golden Tate, and I hate this. I don't want to be this guy that just keeps mentioning this, but we do talk about this on the show. Another one, revenge game, Golden Tate, the Lions. Lions shipped him off last year to Philly.
This is different though than Adam Humphries' revenge game.
Yes, it is a little bit different, but no Sterling Shepard. And this is a game I'm going to want a lot of exposure to. Darius Slay is also out. That's something that's going to help the Giants passing game as well.
And they just traded away their safety as well.
Right. So at 49.5, you need exposure in this game, and I'm going to go with Golden Tate here.
Okay, so we're going to go with Golden Tate and then Ty Johnson or Golden Tate and Odell Beckham. We have to pick two.
Wow. I mean, I guess to be a little bit safer, you got to go with Odell Beckham Jr. then, right?
Okay, so OBJ and Golden Tate and PPR, I have no problem with that. From Zach McBee on Periscope, we have to pick two guys in a standard league, no PPR. He gave us, 4 names to choose from. Le'Veon Bell, Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, and David Montgomery. Let's start immediately with Le'Veon Bell. We know that the volume is going to be there. Go ahead and lock him in. Would you agree?
Yes.
Especially in standard leagues. So now here's the tougher part. Miles Sanders in a game that's going to be very run-heavy, most likely, Philadelphia at Buffalo. Devin Singletary on the other side of that matchup, or David Montgomery. I think we have to go Le'Veon and David Montgomery here, right, Fensty? If you believe what Matt Nagy is trying to sell, that the Bears are going to start running the ball more in an advantageous matchup, he's probably, especially without worrying about guys catching passes, I think Montgomery's going to get the red zone work, and I think he's the most likely guy to score. So I think you got to go Le'Veon. I think you have to go Montgomery.
The thing with Miles Sanders is you're still depending on that 20-yard pass from him. And that's what scares me off a little bit. Again, I have shares in my season-long leagues, but in this particular situation, I know we want to see more from David Montgomery, but Matt Nagy, he's running out of options at this point. He's been trying to deny the inevitable all season long. This guy has to get more carries.
Absolutely.
So we're going with Montgomery today. And you know what? Let's say he doesn't produce. A lot of us will be on that hill to die on together. Because
without a doubt.
The price point, the matchup, and the fact that the Bears need to rely on him more, and they've been talking about it, he's out of options. This needs to happen.
I'm with you there. So, all right. So hopefully that answers your question, Zach. Le'Veon and David Montgomery are the two that we would play today. Another one from PD Dubs, and I see questions from Raymond, from Ben. Corey is back. Another one from PD. MD Johnson 22. Haroon on Periscope. Mr. Sports Take is back. So we will get to all of your guys' questions. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here on this Sunday. We got about 21 minutes left of our live stream, the first edition. A bit out of the blue, but it's a new show, new day. Wake and Rake, Heis and Fensty, glad that you guys are here to hang out.
You know what, Ben? This team is one that continues to roll, and no matter what it is, no matter how you want to dress this team up from the show standpoint, we're here from all of you, Ben. I honestly think it would have been one of the biggest surprises of Week 8 from the fantasy football season if the people didn't hear from us, because this is how it is.
I agree.
We're about you. We're real people. We're real players, just like you. We don't hide anything. We want you to win. When you win, this is how I truly feel. When you win, we win. When we get comments at Benny Heis at Fensty Sports that, hey, you guys said this, that's a victory for me.
Oh, yeah.
That's like getting a perfect score in a test right there. And that motivates us to want to keep going, keep trucking along, and this is what we do. Nothing stops us, Ben.
No, we love what we do. We've been insanely fortunate, both of us, to be able to be put in that position. So might as well keep rolling out the show. We've only done it for the last 5-6 years or so. Let's continue to have some fun. Let's go back to PD Dub. Season-long question, PPR, J.D. McKissick or Ty Johnson rest of the season. So McKissick, we know, if we're talking about PPR, Fensty, we know that he's catching passes. We know that the volume is going to be fairly consistent. He's in that Theo Riddick role, especially with no carry-on moving forward. But do you think Ty Johnson won't get opportunities in the passing game as well? Because I think he will. And I think for now, I'd still probably feel better about the upside of Ty Johnson over. Because at least we know what J.D. McKissick is.
Right, and as I'm looking at Ty Johnson and his previous matchup, I mean, look, he's still got 4 targets. I'll take it. I'll take 4 targets. from someone who's now just becoming in on this offense here, especially when you have J.D. McKissic, who's known to be that third down pass catcher right there at the running back. When seeing Ty Johnson also get some targets, it shows that the Lions are open for short passes to this guy.
No, that's a great
point.
If
I had to pick one right now, and again, this was me. This was a decision I personally had to make. I went with Ty Johnson. I have to stick with him then.
Absolutely. By the way, shout out to our buddy Corey in Winnipeg. He says, I skipped church to be with you guys today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for worshiping at the Church of Fantasy Football with us.
Yes.
We appreciate you spending your Sundays here. That's awesome. From Raymond over on YouTube Live. So should I sit Zach Ertz against the Bills and play Gerald Everett versus the Bengals, or Jonnu Smith or Cameron Brate in a standard league? So he's basically trying to decide. He has Zach Ertz. Should he play Zach Ertz, Gerald Everett, Jonnu Smith, or Cameron Brate today? Listen, I know the weather's really bad, but I'm not that worried about Zach Ertz, Fensty, because his average depth of target is nothing. He's like targeted 6-7 yards down the field. I know that winds are bad, but if we were thinking about like somebody like Austin Hooper, who's been running a lot of go routes for Atlanta, or Travis Kelce deep down the field, I'd be a little bit more concerned. With Zach Ertz, he's still going to get a bunch of targets in the middle of the field in the wind. In fact, I think you can make the argument that he gets more today. So I don't think I would sit Zach Ertz for any of those guys, even with the bad weather in Philadelphia, or the bad weather in Buffalo.
It's so close for me, Ben, as surprising as it is, because, again, I really do want to chase Gerald Everett a little bit this week.
Okay.
I do. We're talking this particular week. But, again, it's very hard for me to justify sitting Zach Ertz. Again, you paid for him, so are you really going to chase now? That's my question.
Well, there's also recency bias, too, because last week, in what seemed to be an ideal matchup on Sunday night against Dallas, he did nothing.
Right.
And I don't think he got a target until the second half, maybe. Like he was completely absent in that game.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. Deshaun Jackson, who's still out, has not been able to take the field. Nelson Aguilar just can't be trusted. When it comes to drops, you really can't fully trust him. So now you keep looking to see who else is there. Miles Sanders, a little bit more active in the passing game. We talked about Dallas Goedert already. And again, thinking from a defensive standpoint, just from game theory itself, when thinking what these coaches can do, make Goddard beat you and always double Zach Ertz. But Zach Ertz is that skilled that'll still find plays in the middle of the field.
Exactly. So I'm fully on board with him. I think even though he's let us down a few times so far this year, I'm fully back to playing him even in bad weather in Buffalo. So, Raymond, hopefully that answers your question. Thanks so much for weighing in and hanging out with us today. From Ben on YouTube Live. So should I play Gardner Minshew or Drew Brees, but I also have Latavius Murray, so would Murray and Brees cancel each other out? I don't typically tend to worry about that. In fact, if anything, like it allows for exposure to touchdowns. I'm all about stacking in a season-long fantasy league. But I mean, I wouldn't play Drew Brees if you think that it's going to be a full-on Latavius Murray game and he's just going to dink it and dunk it and not be involved in the passing game. I think if you believe that the Cardinals' defense is atrocious and both those guys could go off, then you could play them. But I think the upside play today is Gardner Minshew. I really like that matchup against the Jets. Their defense has improved in ways, Fensty, but like not on the corners.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets' secondary right now is terrible, with the exception of their safety play, and they're not generating any sort of a pressure on the quarterback. Right now, the Jets' defense is tough, and they're going to need Sam Darnold to step up and that offense to play better to be able to stay in a lot of these games.
They've been dealing with injuries all year long. I feel like they've not had really a game where everyone's been healthy, Ben, and that's really been the problem with the Jets, maybe outside of week one. So, but again, Ben, if Drew Brees is in, if the Saints are believing in him and they're willing to go with Drew Brees here and not rest him despite how good Teddy Bridgewater is, I'm actually going to disagree with you, and I'm going to go with the Drew Brees side of it. And by the way, just to take what his mentality is regarding, well, do Murray and Brees cancel each other out? To me, that gives you more of a safety net right there with both of them.
Yes, no, that I agree with for sure. Because again, you get the touchdown equity from one of those guys. Unless I don't even know who Latavius Murray's backup is at this point. Unless a touchdown gets vultured and then you lose that on your safety net. But Murray should eat today. And again, I just think that it's going to be very run heavy, and Brees is going to be more in line to to get himself going in the offense, that they're not necessarily going to rely on him. I think Minshew is in line for a really nice game, though. I think the volume and the pass yardage is going to be there. So, all right, we disagree on that. So hopefully, either way, Ben, you have an idea of where we would go with this. So good luck to you. Do you think Miami, this is from Corey, do you think Miami is going to showcase Kenyon Drake to try to trade him?
I was thinking about that today too, Ben.
Yeah, but even if they do, Fensty, like, you still can't play him at this point.
No, this guy hasn't been able to score. And again, why take out? Because again, this is not something that's become recent. This has been all season with Kenyon Drake. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing new right there. So why not give Walton more reps at this point and look forward towards the future? I get it. I get the concern. And probably is smart to give him a little bit more exposure in that offense today to showcase him a bit. But you got to remember, Ben, if he's not getting any positive yardage, that's going to work the opposite way.
Correct.
And the value on him is not going to be as high. So at this point, with the unknown with Kenyon Drake, because they're not really putting him out there as much, maybe Miami just wants to do that. That way they don't expose themselves to being able to value him lower.
Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. And again, like, even if Walton gets the start and he gets, full-on carries, they're not going to be doing it throughout the whole game because they're going to be playing from behind. Miami, let's see, Pittsburgh is hosting them on Monday Night Football. The line in this game currently is minus 14 for the Steelers, so they are 2-touchdown favorites. So even, listen, when you're playing in that kind of a game script, and Pittsburgh's defense is pretty good, like, you're just not going to commit to the run for that long unless they're fully involved in the game, and I just don't see that from Miami this week.
Right.
Here's a quarterback question. It says, I have Lamar Jackson, but he's on a bye. Do I go with Gardner Minshew, Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, or Mason Rudolph? So Minshew is he's on the road against the Jets, correct?
Minshew is
he's at home. I'm sorry.
Minshew's at home. Jets are on the road.
Minshew is at home. Derek Carr is on the road at Houston. Sam Darnold is on the road against Jacksonville, and then Mason Rudolph at home against Miami. So we all agree that the best matchup, the easiest matchup, is for Mason Rudolph. But we were talking about how much we love James Conner earlier in the show, Fensty. Connor is going to be the option. I feel like Mason Rudolph might throw for a touchdown or two, but maybe it'll be for like 180 yards on like 14 of 18 completions. Like, he's just not going to be asked to do much. I see Gardner Minshew chucking it around today, and I feel like they're starting to open up the playbook for him a little bit as well. Incorporate D.D. Westbrook and DJ Chark. I think Minshew is probably the guy that I like the most in this spot, even though Derek Carr is going to have to throw a ton today.
Exactly, and that's why I'm considering Carr a little bit more, Ben. And that's, again, my big thing is attacking Houston. I'm going to stick with Minshew, though. It's as much as I'm going to attack Houston, I'll have a little bit of exposure to Carr today. I'm going to give it the edge to Minshew here. Okay,
fair enough. Mr. Sports Takes checking in. Appreciate the kind words there, man. From MD Johnson 22, the Sergeant. Need two, non-PPR. Philip Lindsay, Shady McCoy, Ty Johnson, David Johnson, or Chase Edmonds. Okay, so we can rule out David Johnson. He is out. Chase Edmonds is starting. Non-PPR, it's a difficult matchup, but you absolutely fire him up amongst all those guys, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now we have to decide between Philip Lindsay on the road at Indianapolis, Shady McCoy at home against Green Bay, or Ty Johnson at home against the Giants. This might surprise you, Fensty, but I think the way that the Chiefs are going to have to attack Green Bay today is on the ground. Matt Moore is the starting quarterback. Green Bay has been very good against the pass. Shady finally took over that number one role last week in the game against Denver. I think if it's standard non-PPR, Chase Edmonds and Shady McCoy are probably the way to go, unless you are buying in on Ty Johnson getting all the goal line work and really dominating inside the 5 for Detroit in a very good matchup today. But I'll say this. Yeah, go ahead.
If this were PPR, I'd give the edge to Johnson. Again, the 4 targets last week were encouraging here.
Yes.
But it's not. And because of that, I have to be safe and go McCoy.
Okay, so we're in agreement there. MD Johnson 22, Chase Edmonds, and Shady McCoy are our plays for today. We got about 10 minutes left. Keep sending those questions in, you guys. From PD Dubs, any worries with the weather in Buffalo today? Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about it over the course of the show. And especially 20 to 40 mile per hour swirling winds in Buffalo, according to Kevin Roth of Roto Grinders. This is not an ideal spot with the weather to attack Philadelphia secondary. They might get lucky with a long touchdown for John Brown, but I'd be surprised. I think both of these teams are going to have to change how they attack each team downfield. It's going to be run heavy. It's going to be a low total. It's already dropped 2.5 points from 46 to 43.5. I like the Eagles in this game to try and establish the running game because you can run on Buffalo, but you cannot throw. So I do have some concerns about the weather in Buffalo for sure.
Yeah, no, same here. And that's, again, it's really frustrating because I have Josh Allen right now in so many of my dummy lineups, and I'm going to have to take him out for the most part. Because
Derek Carr or Josh Allen in a quarterback toss-up today?
I'm going to go with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Again,
I think that's the way to go.
Rush Houston. That's why.
Well, but the other thing, too, is that Josh Allen, if he takes off and runs, then you get the higher points from the touchdown volume, 6 instead of 4. And the floor gets lowered. So is it necessarily a safer play because of his ability to run?
But is it a safer play because of the weather issues too? We've been talking about how stingy the run defense is. So in a way, I don't think there is much safety here.
That's fine. Carr's going to have to throw a lot against Houston, and especially with Ty Williams coming back and Waller already being involved. Yeah, I think that's probably the right play to go with Derek Carr. From Fever, and by the way, I see a message coming in from MJ Kleibert1, good listener of ours over in New Orleans for the weekly hits there. So appreciate you checking in. Thanks for watching the show with us today. From Fever, a wide receiver toss-up between Kenny Stills or Christian Kirk. If Kirk is able to go, Fensty, do you prefer him to Kenny Stills today?
Man, I really want to go with Kenny Stills here. Only
I do too.
I don't know what his role is going to be. I just saw Rap Sheet just reported here that he's still expected to play. Take that as you will, but that's an encouraging sign that he's going to be in. And I'm still going with Kenny Stills here, looking for that.
That was the Justin Fensterman, Ian Rappaport warning of the show.
I
tried going strong for about 5 years.
I tried to be a little, because we're journalists, Ben. We're journalists here, and I'm sorry, but when I see those reports, it's like 50% here. So with that, I don't mean any disrespect, but I mean a little disrespect.
I mean a little disrespect. It doesn't interrupt a point. From Sean, full PPR, who is the better flex between Juju Smith-Schuster Monday night against the Dolphins or Derrick Henry at home against Tampa Bay? Full point PPR, absolutely the answer is Juju Smith-Schuster. If it was standard league, you can make more of an argument for Derrick Henry, even though it's a matchup I don't care for him this week. So I would much rather go with Juju here.
I'm actually going to go with Juju. Again, it's Miami, and I'm thinking with Mason Rudolph back. So I'm going to go with Juju on the Monday night game.
From Luke over on Periscope, should I start Drew Brees or Matthew Stafford? Drew Brees, of course, coming back for Teddy Bridgewater. They are at home against Matthew Stafford in an ideal home matchup against the New York Giants. I'm going Matthew Stafford. And I know that people don't love to play him. People in season long especially just don't like to play Matthew Stafford, but he's had a really nice year. I think more people have started to own him in daily. I'm trying to find some of the ownership numbers. No. You want this is crazy, Fensty. Listen to these ownership numbers for Matthew Stafford via DraftKings. 3.3% against Arizona, 3.2% against the Chargers, 3.7% against Philadelphia, 3.3% against the Chiefs, 2% against the Minnesota Vikings. And quietly, he's having a top 7 fantasy season at the quarterback spot and hitting wide receivers deep. And even though they lost last week against Minnesota, he put up monster numbers. This is going to be the week when Matthew Stafford gets 15% ownership or more, and I hope for his sake he delivers because he's a great cash game option today.
And just also proof that once again for those in the future, especially those that lost Mahomes and you can't control injuries and whatnot, this is just proof that you don't have to pay up for quarterbacks in fantasy football. This is a guy in Stafford, and we've been talking about guys like Minshew, guys who could stream, Jacoby Brissett, streaming options. So for those that may lose their quarterback in the next few weeks, just know in 2 quarterback leagues, naturally a lot tougher. But in 1 quarterback leagues, you can stream, and Matthew Stafford's a perfect example of that.
From Miller Litecoin on Periscope, it says, I have Matt Breida and David Montgomery. Is there any value for them for the rest of the season, or should I look to move them in half-point PPR? The problem about trying to move either of these 2 guys now, Miller Litecoin, is they're at their lowest possible value. You're not going to get a lower value right now for David Montgomery. I found him on the streets of one of my fantasy leagues and grabbed him, a couple weeks ago after the bye. If I want to move on from Montgomery, if I worry that Matt Nagy is going to revert back to the pass-happy offense, ideally it's after this game. But I think if the Bears win and they win in convincing fashion, the light bulb goes off and says, all right, this is a way to protect Mitch. This is a way to keep our team in the game. This is a way to get W's, and the Bears need to get themselves back to the playoffs. So I'm not necessarily moving Montgomery. I do think Matt Breida, because of the injury risk and because Tevin Coleman is getting all of the goal line work, if Breida goes off Fensty, then I absolutely feel like he's somebody that you can consider moving.
Yes, and it's almost like every time you see him break it for a long run, you just hold your breath and hope that he's not hurt. He didn't injure his ankle or his knee. That's with Matt Breida. It goes back to last year as well, where he was virtually questionable every week. He's been a little bit more healthy this season. But like you said, when Tevin Coleman coming back, and even when, and it goes back to that 49ers-Browns game once again, even when Tevin Coleman, he wasn't 100%, they still played him. They immediately still went to him in 49ers. Yeah. So with that, Breida is definitely, I don't want to say on the outs, but he's definitely not the prioritized back. But again, this is value, and running backs in general have more value, but you can't value these guys until another breakout performance like this. So I'd hold off, but yes, like you said, Ben, if Breida has a very strong game, then look to value him properly.
If we're looking at the game log for Matt Breida over the last few weeks, 13 attempts for 36 yards against the Rams, on the field for 28 out of 78 snaps. Last week in the win against Washington, that was supposed to be a very run-heavy game, only 8 rushing attempts for 35 yards. The snaps went down from 28 to 17. And really not much action in the passing game as well. He's had 4 targets 2 weeks ago and then only 1 last week. So, yeah, wait for that big game from Breida and hope that that's an ideal time to move him, especially if all the other 49ers running backs are healthy. If not, if you're worried about Tevin Coleman going down, then that's another guy that you want to stash onto and hang on to for a while as well.
Right, handcuff value is very different, but at the same time, if you're looking for standalone trade value for Matt Breida, if he doesn't get 10 carries in this game, you're not going to be able to value him for anything. You're going to be selling him for a cup of coffee at this point.
Not at all. I see a question from Fever. My buddy Joey's checking in, so we'll get to his question to round out the show. One last one from Sean on a YouTube quarterback toss-up. Jameis Winston or Mason Rudolph? So I told you my feelings about Jameis Winston. Those were one of the stats that was broken down by my good buddy Derek Brown over at thequantedge.com involving this game and how Jameis Winston could be really, really sneaky. Yeah, he's gotten a little bit more publicity this week between that game and as far as some sharp plays go. But I do think Jameis Winston is in play this week. I do think he throws for 300 yards easily along with a couple of touchdowns. Might get picked off a couple times. Listen, it's Jameis Winston. You kind of have to anticipate that along the way.
A roller coaster ride. Think of Jameis Winston like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad right there, because that's what you're going to get, up and down. And up
and sometimes your stomach feels great when he throws for 303 touchdowns. Other times you puke all over yourself like he did 2 weeks ago. So you're right. It's the Thunder Mountain of fantasy football. I'm rolling the dice with Jameis Winston. I know that the matchup couldn't be better for Mason Rudolph Fensty, but I still think it's going to be very ground heavy for Pittsburgh.
Well, think of it like this. With Miami not really posing any threat whatsoever this season, if Mason Rudolph gets a, let's say, 14-0 lead, they're going to rely on Connor the rest of the way.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So that's why I feel like it's a narrative that's not set up well for Rudolph. He'll be fine, but it's not going to be a high ceiling type game.
Just know what you're going into with Jameis Winston and Daly. That's all it is. Okay?
Of course, yeah.
Every week, I don't care how good or bad the matchup is, every week that disclaimer has to be in your mind that, okay, he could throw touchdowns, but he may also throw 2 picks as well. That's just the reality of the situation.
And again, if you're playing on DraftKings, the interception isn't going to kill you. Let's not forget that it's -1 compared to some places where it could be -2 or -3. So I think Jameis Winston is a fantastic play, and I think both Evans and Godwin are stackable options. From Fever, tight end toss-up between Evan Ingram and Gerald Everett. Boy, did Evan Ingram really let down fantasy owners last week against Arizona,
man.
But I'm going right back to him this week.
Yes, fewer targets to worry about when it comes to receiving weapons here. And again, this isn't a game where I'm going to have a ton of spread out exposure to. I already mentioned Golden Tate like him there. Saquon, smash spot for him. Evan Ingram going back to him as well, again, with no Sterling Shepard. Other players are going to get targeted, so I'm going to Ingram here.
So from Joey, do you go Golden Tate or Brandon Cooks this week?
Ooh. You know what, man? Let's have a little fun. Let's go with Golden Tate here.
Okay.
I'm in. Think he's going to get a lot of targets. Huge breakout. I mean, you've already seen what he's done in just a couple of games back already. Let's have a little fun. That is something that I will chase today, and I'll go down with the ship if it doesn't work out. I don't think it's a huge chase, but still fewer targets to worry about than with LA. So why not go with Golden Tate?
Well, you're right. Less mouths to feed, more targets likely directed towards Golden Tate. So, but I do think Cooks is the higher ceiling option against the bad Cincinnati secondary in London. I believe it's an indoor stadium, correct?
It is. It's Wembley.
It's Wembley Stadium. So yeah, and that's fast track. I'd rather go with Brandon Cooks then, because I feel like those are ideal situations for him to thrive. But it's definitely chasing after the points as opposed to getting the safety net with Golden Tate. So, Joey, if you want to play it safe, go with Golden Tate. If you want to chase the points a little bit, roll the dice a little bit, go with Brandon Cooks. Final couple ones coming in. Alshon Jeffrey or A.J. Brown in a toss-up. I'm going A.J. Brown because the matchup and the weather right now is just not good when it comes to Philadelphia at Buffalo today.
You got to view this Titans team differently. They just look different with Ryan Tannehill. And again, no Delaney Walker there. And we're talking about Corey Davis as a play. That's what the world has come to in our world.
He's there. He is in play now.
No, I'm fine with that, Ben. I am.
Let's see. From King ZK15 on Twitter/Periscope, Damian Williams or Corey Davis in the flex in a full point PPR. I love Damian Williams at the start of the year, Fensty. I really had higher expectations for him. I think you got to go Corey Davis here.
Yeah, no, again, there's a different team that they're looking like you could throw on Tampa. So with that, we're going to go with Davis today. Doesn't make me feel good saying that. But that's
and then last one from Alex Aware6. What do we do with Keenan Allen? I just read he's going to give it a go today. You can play him. It's a tough matchup against the Bears. I think they're going to be, assuming they can run and assuming that the offense has any sort of capabilities whatsoever, I think the Chargers are in line for a difficult game. Normally, Keenan Allen, the way that they move him all over the field, I think would match up well in this spot. But if he's on your season-long team, I think you have to play him. I'm not touching him in daily today.
Right. No, not one bit.
And it's crazy, too, because considering the start that he got off to this year, Fensty, was just an absolute barn burner. And it just has not happened the last several weeks.
No.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's sad with Keenan Allen, but that's an area where teams have realized, okay, we're going to take out this monster here, and we're going to make your other receiving weapons beat you. And more teams need to do that with prioritized receivers.
All right, we've gone a little bit over, but it's not like we have anywhere that we really need to be. Do you want to go over a couple intriguing sort of daily plays, or go ahead and say let's go ahead and shut the door on Wake and Rake today?
No, let's give the people what they want then. So where are you when it comes to value quarterbacks here? I'm very you mentioned Stafford.
Stafford is amongst my favorites. I talked about how I really like Jameis Winston today.
What about Daniel Jones on the other side of that matchup? I love this Giants-Lions matchup. I know you do. Doesn't let down.
Daniel Jones on DK 5,800. Winston is only 100 more. I'd rather have like Gardner Minshew at 5,500 than Daniel Jones at 5,800. And I know that you like Tate, and I know that you like Barkley, and those three guys are in play, and you can run it back on the other side. With Galladay, or Marvin Jones if you want as well. But I still think Detroit comes to play today against the Giants. I don't particularly care for Daniel Jones. Other value quarterbacks on a site like DK, Ryan Tannehill, he'll be a popular cash play at 5,100. And Derek Carr also in play at 5,000 today.
Yep, we attack Houston. That's what we do. Success.
At the running back spot, if we're looking for some value and some sneaky plays, let me ask you this. Between Christian McCaffrey at 9,200 or Saquon Barkley at 8,900, who do you like most?
I'm going with Barkley there.
I prefer the matchup for Barkley, too.
Yeah,
Crazy to think that McCaffrey could actually be a really intriguing tournament option today. And I think Carolina could go and beat San Francisco. I've been waiting for the 49ers to eventually start to show their true colors. I don't think they're this good, and maybe that makes me a hater, but I think McCaffrey, also a homecoming game for him because he played his ball at Stanford.
Right, and also remember, and again, I mentioned this earlier in our show, Ben, but Nick Chubb was able to run successfully on San Francisco, and CMC will as well.
Yeah, and the matchup, again, for Nick Chubb is a rainy game in New England, and I think that's going to be a big volume opportunity for him.
For you, Benny Heis here for an intriguing running back, someone we haven't even talked about once this show here. Matt Schaub under center here. Do you give a little bit more love to Devonta Freeman today?
He's 5,500 on DK. Looking over on FanDuel, let's see where he stacks up amongst the competition. It's good value, I think, for Freeman, especially with how they've been starting to use him more in the passing game. I don't think I want any Falcons with Matt Schaub under center. He's old and bad, and he's been old and bad for several years. So what indication was that going to give me that the rest of the Atlanta offense is going to get going? I will say this about today's game too. If Matt Ryan was playing, I would have loved Russell Wilson today. I would have loved Russell Wilson. I would love DK Metcalf. Maybe an argument for Tyler Lockett as well. But with no Matt Ryan, it's going to be the Chris Carson show. And I don't think he's going to get enough ownership today either.
Right. No, he's in a good spot. By the way, I'm still going to go with Metcalf in a few lineups as well. Russell Wilson will find a way to connect with him. Other running back options for value that we've talked about throughout the show, Austin Eckler. Again, think of him like a receiver, but still with
Freeman is 6,200 by the way on FanDuel. So he's 55 on DK, 62 on FanDuel.
Right. So I think Eckler, another nice value play today. We talked about that earlier. And look, we mentioned Ty Johnson as well. I think this is a very big show-me game for Ty Johnson.
Yes.
4,900. So him and David Montgomery, very nice price points for both of them. So they're both in play for me.
If you're looking to pivot off of Ty Johnson, I really like James White at 5,100 as well.
Yep.
And then Latavius Murray is going to be the chalk game running back of the day, 5,800, and for an outstanding matchup at home as big favorites against the Arizona Cardinals. I think if you're looking for a really good stack, New Orleans defense, Latavius Murray is a correlation play. Is an outstanding stack. It's going to be expensive on the defensive side, but you remember you're saving a little bit with Latavius Murray. At the wide receiver spot, when it comes to value, Mike Williams against the Bears is only 4K today. Cortland Sutton, for sure now the number one wide receiver without Emmanuel Sanders, 5,300. And Tyler Boyd, listen, I know that the touchdowns have not been there, but he's getting a ton of volume in this offense, Fensty, only at 5,100. He's playing about 100% of the snaps. He's 14 targets last week, 7, 14, 6, 11, 10, 11. Like, he's only had 2 games with single-digit targets this year. He just only has one big blow-up game. They're going to be playing from behind. There's going to be garbage time opportunities. I think Tyler Boyd could be a really nice play today as well.
So you think that even if they're not finding him successfully, they're just going to keep going to him?
I don't know who Andy Dalton is going to throw to, right? Like you throw in Auden Tate while being shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. You throw in Alex Erickson.
See, I was just about to say, is there some sneaky value because Erickson 14 targets?
Yeah, he was very good last week, but I feel like you'd be chasing the points this week.
Yeah, 100%.
So I would prefer Tyler Boyd. Right. And then also, from a couple intriguing options if we're looking at value. Kenny Stills, 4,700, and how about Ted Ginn? Like, we're talking about Drew Brees coming back. Ted Ginn is 3,700 against Arizona and that awful secondary. He can always burn them deep, and especially if they want Brees to get into a rhythm, Ted Ginn should be able to have a big touchdown play today.
I mean, you would think that Michael Thomas would get that extra pressure, but the price is just too cheap. So for those that are starting Brees and thinking especially in daily, nice to line him up with Ted Ginn Jr. right there.
Yeah. Also, A.J. Brown, 4,100 for the Tennessee Titans going up this week. And you mentioned DK Metcalf. He is 5K. Marvin Jones, after that amazing performance last week, is 5,800. And another guy that I like this week, Deshaun Hamilton, 3,300 for the Broncos with no Emmanuel Sanders. And Anthony Miller for the Bears, I believe is 3,500. He got targeted the most that he has been all season long, Fensty. Mitch Trubisky needs him. They're not on the same page, but if you believe Trubisky can get off to a better start this week, he's another guy that's in play. Lastly, go ahead.
Montgomery, Mitch, feed him.
Yeah. If you're running a run pass option, it's not an RPO, it's a row. Give it to Montgomery or you run. That when Trubisky was the number one quarterback in fantasy for a 4 or 5 week stretch, Fensty, it was because he was taking off and running. He was using his athleticism to his advantage. Hasn't done that at all this year. Finally, at the tight end spot, there's not a lot of variance, Fensty. Like, the most expensive tight end is Darren Waller at 5,900, followed by Austin Hooper at 5,500 on DraftKings. And then Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry are all sort of in that range. If you're looking at really cheap guys, no O.J. Howard, and Jameis Winston has shown a tendency to throw to Cameron Brate. Brate is 2,700 against Tennessee. T.J. Hawkinson in a great matchup against the Giants is 3,500. Dallas Goedert, 2,800. Josh Hill, 3,200. And then Jonnu Smith, the guy that we talked about a little bit earlier, is 2,800. So I think one of those tight ends in that Tennessee-Tampa game is really intriguing.
Yeah, no, Jonnu Smith is someone that I'm really honing in on in a few lineups as well. When he's at under 3,000, I mean, that's just too good here. And again, if you miss on a guy that's 2,800, that's no problem. You're expecting him at this point to just get you a few receptions, maybe hit that end zone. Even if it's one reception gets you in that end zone, boom, you hit value.
I also kind of like Noah Fant today, especially with no Emmanuel Sanders in the middle of the field. Fant is only 2,900. I think he's going to get and start to see his targets go up, and he's going to have non-existent ownership. So quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, from every fantasy site, from your season long, from your dailies, wherever, the shackles have been lifted, my friend. We are here for you guys the rest of the season. Fensty, where can people hear you? Where can they find your work over the course of this next week?
Yes, you can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Wake Up Fantasy Sports, as well on Saturdays 6 to 8 a.m. Eastern, also throughout the week as well, during the week, especially in Fantasy Alarm, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, at Fensty Sports on Twitter. And don't forget, it is also basketball season.
Yes, so it is.
Yes, for those diving into daily hoops as well, I'm watching as much tape as I possibly can so we can figure out those trends and beat the rest of the world.
His stuff is fantastic. Make sure you're reading him at Fantasy Alarm. Make sure you are listening to him at SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Thank you guys again for sticking with us, for hanging with us. It's a slightly different platform now, but that doesn't mean that the content and where we are coming from to help you guys win your leagues is going to change. So, for my good friend Justin Fensterman, I am Ben Heisler. Thank you guys for watching the first installment of Wake and Rake with Heis Fensty. We will talk to you guys next week. Be good, everybody.
Wake and Rake!